It's so much hate watching and
Yeah.
hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a rabies infested hen house.
And at the same time, it seemed like the most interesting part was their audience seemed to be on my side.
Yes.
To be, if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
you don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Host.
You think it's
is dumb.
deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked, half baked, and you went on stage with it, and it's nothing.
Imagine Joe Rogan and Coleman Hughes arriving at the scene with the vigor of two men attempting to fix a dripping tap, only to use reason to fill the entire house with calm surgical takedowns that left the hosts blinking as if they had forgotten their lines. You must observe the silent ones, and these two transformed a daily drama into a masterclass in poise. I'm anxious to see how it all came to pass, and I know you'll want to see
Did you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it because it's so
On TV,
crazy.
she said
On television.
Let's look at a scenario where the Supreme Court says, yes, he has all those rights. He is immune from everything.
Yeah.
You know what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
He could throw every Republican in jail.
Joe Rogan and Coleman Hughes were calmly somewhere else, completely obliterating them with intellect without even stepping foot on set, while the View hosts were busy acting out an emotional breakdown over coffee mugs and cards. It was the roast equivalent of a sniper shot from 3 time zones away. There was no screaming, no table flipping, and no dramatic sighs that could shatter wine glasses. Like a precision-guided missile, cold, calculating logic was launched from the podcast cosmos.
Strange show, but it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch them.
It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, they're just, it's interesting because I think Sunny's very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured.
Right.
It's sort of. I think the other ones. There's a couple of the other ones. Don't have to name any names. Are just very dull-minded. But I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart but captured.
Sure. I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course.
In its typical midday meltdown format, The View decided to make broad statements about everything: politics, culture, race, you name it, served with the tact of a foghorn at a funeral. When these statements included less than subtle jabs at so-called anti-woke men, guess whose names surfaced on Twitter? That's right, Joe Rogan and Coleman Hughes, also known as the intellectual avengers of sanity.
I saw you on The View.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been overwhelming my past couple days.
Yeah. Is that annoying?
No.
No.
I mean, it's just when I was on there, I really had no idea how it was going to land with the audience. So I just went in there, did my thing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my character in that way.
Thus, they were in between. Both of them took a moment to share their thoughts on the chaos parade known as The View. Joe began first because, of course, he did in typical Rogan fashion, but it wasn't a rageful tirade. It wasn't dramatic, and worse, it was calm. Roger was probably lifting kettlebells and recording a podcast at the same time, and Coleman was probably breaking down political philosophy while ironing his shirt.
If I'm being honest with you, because I want to believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a Republican.
So how do you...
He's never voted for a Republican.
You've said that you're a conservative.
No, I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote for a Republican, probably a non-Trump Republican if they were compelling. I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me.
Coleman Hughes arrived with a cool vibe that made Joe look like he was foaming at the mouth. Hughes brought data cold, unfailing numbers, graphs that looked like emotional stability, and everything The View couldn't comprehend. He subtly pointed out how The View manages to discuss race and politics with all the depth of a puddle in a heat wave, and every opinion they shared was more recycled than a Whole Foods bag. He basically described The View as a cross between daytime drama and an improv class where everyone is allergic to facts the hosts weren't discussing, they were performing. The real punch was that both of them destroyed the entire institution from the comfort of their own platforms without even being on the show. They looked at the daytime calamity and said, "Yeah, we'll pass, but here's our opinion anyway. Brace yourself." That's like defeating a boss in a computer game with just one button and cheat codes.
But
With
it's
no-
not about
no
you,
evidence
but
that
I
I've
just
co-opted.
I want to give you the opportunity to respond to the
I appreciate it.
the criticism.
I appreciate being co-opted by anyone. I have an independent podcast. I work for CNN as an analyst. I write for the Free Press. I'm independent in all of these endeavors, and no one is paying me to say what I'm saying. I'm saying it because I feel it.
Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He
believes in dragons?
He believes in dragons.
Joey
what this is.
Behar was trying to say that I believe in dragons.
Wait, what is this? I
She
just heard
said I
about it.
checked it. I checked it. And then the lady goes, "Did you double check this?" She goes, "I checked it. He believes in dragons."
Should be like
You think they live
Sasquatch,
alongside of
bitch.
people?
Wait,
This is from a wildlife biologist who came on my podcast.
Joe took particular issue with the show's war on male opinions, not because he was offended, but because he believes it is so cartoonishly ridiculous that even though E. Coyote would call it overkill, The View has the magical ability to conflate disagreement with disrespect, logic with violence, and data with oppression. When you do that enough, he claims, you end up with a table full of millionaires acting as though they are being persecuted by a man with a podcast mic and a brain. Coleman, who is never one to yell when a whiteboard will do, calmly explained the danger of that mindset, highlighting how The View thrives on conflict masquerading as commentary rather than truth or open discussion. They don't want nuance, they want villains, and guess what? Naturally, the worst nightmare for a program that relies on verbal food battles and emotional whiplash is clever, quiet, unshakable. Considering that The View is basically a podcast with camera angles that mimic Botox and an audience that is trained to applaud like seals whenever someone uses the word oppression inappropriately, it is hilarious that one of the hosts, whose name rhymes with whose, made some vague remarks about men with microphones being toxic or part of some patriarchal podcast complex in a later episode.
That the anti-racism movement, that is just another form of racism, and you even say it has a lot in common with white supremacy. How can you compare those two things?
They both view your race as extremely significant part of who you are. Neo-racists like Rob D'Angelo, they say that to be white is to be ignorant. Well, this is a racial stereotype, and I want to call a spade and say this is not the style of anti-racism we have to be teaching our kids. We should be teaching them that your race is not a significant feature of who you are. Who you are is your character, your value, and your skin color doesn't say anything about that.
But here's where it gets even funnier. Rather than responding with substance, The View reverted to its favorite setting, theatrical victimhood, and suddenly they were the ones being attacked. Not by name, of course, because Rogan and Hughes were too sophisticated for that, but by implication. Speaking of spirals, let's talk about their response, or lack thereof. Instead of confronting the criticism head-on, they danced around it like it was a lit stove, using the typical buzzwords. Privilege, misinf to his credit. Joe grinned without even raising his voice, saying, "Oh honey, you're not ready." Coleman, however, most likely launched Excel and began color-coding instances of The View's illogical claims. The irony here is that The View, a show that prides itself on providing a platform for strong, diverse female voices, can't seem to handle strong, diverse male voices, especially the kind who don't break into hysterics. It wasn't a fight. Rather, it was an audit, and The View failed. They say in the middle of a sentence that they embrace variety, but only if it is accompanied by a pre-planned anger and no questioning.
That show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in. You know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her. You know, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what was that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her? Jamie? She was always yelling. It's just, it's a bizarre show.
So we had 8 minutes, and America's approach to race pretty big topic, pretty important topic.
I think the way you
So-
just before you start, I think the
Yeah.
way you described it is
Imagine being so thoroughly criticized by two people who didn't even bother to attend your meltdown. It would be like preparing for a duel and learning that your opponent sent a well-written essay instead of trying to respond with a fist to the facts, but they still tried. Their response was like trying to use a game of Uno to battle a chess grandmaster. Naturally, the internet witnessed everything. Twitter had a field day, and memes appeared like mushrooms following a downpour. One of them showed Rogan photoshopped onto Gandalf, who was yelling at a screamed crowd of Hobbit hosts, while another had Hughes, Coleman reading a book from The View called How to Win Arguments Without Talking to Anyone Peacefully. Joe and Coleman weren't merely making lighthearted remarks about the viewpoint. They were bringing up a more serious issue that would make anyone who depends on indignation for interaction shudder. The View, Joe's attitude, and similar prosper by inciting others to be angry all the time. For them, indignation is not merely a technique. It is their main source of
To be, if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
you don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin.
You think it's
dumb.
deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked, half baked, and you went on stage with it and it's nothing.
nor the details and the subtleties. Let's agitate folks and act as though we've resolved the world's issues by yelling about them. But in the world of sensationalism and culture wars, that's like taking a book to a knife fight. Joe, on the other hand, is about deep, meaningful conversations that truly get to the heart of the issue. Then there's Coleman. Even more specifically, his goal is to promote reasoned conversation over the tribal noise that is suffocating rational discourse. Coleman doesn't need to fly a victim flag to be heard. He is all about finding the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be for those who would prefer to yell catchphrases and go to bed. He is out there seeking answers, not sound bites. The contrast gets humorous when the viewer is mired in indignation porn and hurling rhetorical outbursts that resemble kids squabbling over the last cookie, rather than adults engaging in a real debate. The scene of complete pandemonium. Joe and Coleman are calm and collected, like two academics enjoying a relaxing cup of coffee after a lecture, despite the yelling and table slamming energy that could run a theme park for 10 years.
So we had 8 minutes to deal with this topic on one of the biggest platforms in the country, and especially an audience that isn't my typical audience. If anything, the Views audience is really who needs to hear my message the most. And Sunny decided to take up a few minutes of that precious 8 minutes and attack me as someone who's been co-opted by the right and someone who's a charlatan. And
Did she use the term charlatan?
she did. And it's funny because I actually didn't notice it in real time. It kind of went in one ear and out the other.
It's like watching someone try to light a fire by shouting at a wet log while the View is having a tantrum about something minor. The View's screaming is all surface, all emotion, and all drama, with nothing to support it. Conversely, Joe and Coleman's reasoning is clear and refreshing, but a little too logical for comfort. Now picture the split screen. On one side, the hosts of The View are flopping like fish out of water, while on the other, Joe and Coleman sit back, sipping coffee, and making points with the precision of a laser beam. The contrast is stark, but it's not even close. And when you really think about it, this wasn't a fight, but rather a reality check that was delivered with grace. A small eye roll, The View was completely destroyed by two men who didn't even raise their voices in the unified YouTube comments, which aren't exactly known for their delicacy. The finality of this takedown was what really made it sting. There was no need for follow-up after Roger and Hugh finished their piece, and unlike The View, they moved on without using it for drama or airtime. Some referred to it as a masterclass, while others called it a mercy killing.
That show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show, if the CIA is engineering, Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View, because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of there are so many brilliant women out there, none of them are on The View. none of them have gone near the set of The View. I mean, they have brought in the lowest tier of the, what is it, the Y chromosome?
No.
The X. Okay.
What distinguishes thinkers from performers is that they treated the collapse of the views as a speed bump on the highway to better ideas. Roger and Hughes only needed to speak once to send the entire view table into a defensive haze. They didn't need to yell or dramatically sip from a mug bearing their names. The Viewpoint attempted to reframe the story by claiming that they were unapologetically fearless women who refused to be silenced, as though the men, especially the ones who think clearly and speak in complete paragraphs, were the ones who were actually endangering their airtime, not their own incapacity to allow a guest to finish a sentence. At this point, it's difficult not to feel sorry for the characters, not because they are victims, but rather because they have turned into caricatures of themselves, with each episode repeating the same outrage, the same misconceptions, and the same frantic yearning for significance in a chaotic way. The View faces the worst fate imaginable for a show built on noise being ignored once the audience realizes they can get better analysis from a calm podcast or a YouTube clip with two guys in t-shirts. In the meantime, their critics are quietly destroying their entire existence while sipping coffee. Their words hurt more than any shout ever could. Roger and Hughes didn't destroy The View with insults. Instead, they used something far more dangerous: coherence. They didn't cancel them. Instead, they exposed them, like pulling back the curtain on Oz to reveal a fog machine and a woman named Barbara screaming about patriarchy. What's left is a table, a few mugs, and an echo chamber that no longer echoes back. If you're still watching The View for insight, congratulations, you've chosen chaos. But for the rest of us, Joe and Coleman will be over here with sensible thinking and a diesel level below the jet engine. The problem is that while The View can throw tantrums, Rogan and Hughes quietly and effectively throw shade with the quiet confidence of people who know their ate.